Nowhere to run to, baby. Nowhere to hide. Got nowhere to run, baby. Nowhere to hide. It's not love I'm running from. It's the heartbreak I know will come. 'Cause I know you're no good for me. But free of you, I'll never be. Everywhere I go, your face I see. Every step I take, you take with me. Yeah. Nowhere to run to, baby. Nowhere to hide. I got nowhere to run to, baby. Nowhere to hide. I know you're no good for me. You become a part of me. Yeah.
He said, not only that, but look at here. Look. I got beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, lamb, rams, hogs, dogs, chicken, turkeys, rabbits. You name it.
Yes, you name it. 99 Pod, we are back in the building, in the virtual building. It's going down right now. Let's get ready to pod here on 99 Pod. It's going down on God, keeping it real, no fraud. Man, when I tell you we have a loaded show for you today, I mean that sincerely. Okay, this is the week of Thanksgiving. There's a lot to be thankful for. And we want some more. Okay, we want some more food. We want some more sports. That's what we do here on this show. So for those of y'all watching on TikTok, the time is ticking. Make sure you follow me here on TikTok. Make sure you watch the video on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Real Leel TV without the underscores, because it's going down, okay? All right? Make sure you tap in because we are actually live visually on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, but you can only hear us on TikTok. I got my guy Zach in the building. Zach, a lot to cover. We got the Harbaugh brothers we're going to talk about here. The Harbaugh Bowl was last night. We also got some NFL stuff. And Zach, what's going on, man? How you feeling?
Will, my guy, doing well. Happy to be here with you as always. Wanted to wish you and everyone listening a very happy Thanksgiving. And I'll say this, man, and I've said this a bunch of times over the years on this show. Thanksgiving for me is a real eye-opener. It's a real eyebrow raiser because not only does the weather start to get really cold, it starts getting dark out at 5 o'clock in the evening, which is never a great thing. But that is really the sign for me that, okay, as great as the regular season has been so far, this is really the time of year when we get into December and we get into January and early February. Like, this is the time when champions are made. You have to be playing your best football at this point, or else you wasted the first couple weeks of the season. You know, what you've done up to this point, it matters a little bit because obviously you want to secure that spot in the playoffs. You want to win as many games as possible early. But for me, I've always realized that you want to be peaking. You want to be playing your best football right around this time of year. Just off the top of my mind, like the Miami Dolphins are a team that comes to mind. Last year, they started off so hot. And then it was right around this time of the year last year where things really started to fall apart. How about this, Lil? I actually saw this today. 1 year ago today, the number one seed in the AFC going into Thanksgiving week last year was the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we know everything that has gone wrong for that franchise since. So really, this is the time of year where champions are made. You have to be playing your best football. And I just can't wait to watch all of it unfold.
And champions are made here on this mic. And you know what, man? Before we proceed to give y'all what y'all need, make sure y'all proceed to follow me on all platforms, on TikTok, on YouTube. We're getting a lot of likes. Keep it up. Keep it coming, okay? It's about to go down. And we might as well begin with the Harbaugh Bowl from last night, Monday Night Football. It went down. Two brothers, same mama, I believe, same daddy, I believe. But guess what? Only one could have won, and that was Mr. John Harbaugh. So we might as well break it down. What did the Harbaugh Bowl tell us? And where does this rivalry stack up in the NFL? So, Zach, your takeaways, my man.
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying this. I think that was just a much-needed performance by the Baltimore Ravens to really just take a deep breath, really get back into not only the AFC North race, but really the AFC race overall for that top seed. And it's just crazy to me, man. You know, I wasn't on the show last week, so I didn't really have the opportunity to talk about that Ravens-Steelers game from the week prior. But Lamar Jackson, it's wild that this guy, unless he's playing the Chiefs, the Steelers, or it's a playoff game. Like, as long as it's not any of those three things, this guy just dominates the rest of the NFL. We know his career against the NFC and how he only has one career loss against that entire conference. Of course, ironically, that came against Daniel Jones and the Giants. But as long as he's not facing any of those three circumstances, we know how electric, how dynamic this guy is. I also wanted to give the Ravens defense credit, especially after the way the Chargers started off the game, driving right down the field and scoring. I really thought they did a good job of bending and not breaking, really holding the Chargers to field goals, which honestly, I think that was one of their better performances of the season. And when you look at this Baltimore team, they're an enigma because there's never going to be a game they play where they take the field and you say to yourself, like, oh, they can't win this game. Like, no matter who is on the other side of the field, they're always going to have a chance to win. And looking at their schedule, they're going to have a monster out-of-conference game next week when they host the Philadelphia Eagles, America's Game of the Week. I can't wait for that one. But when you look at the AFC standings right now, you have Baltimore only a half game back of Pittsburgh in the North, currently sitting at 8-4. Obviously, right now, Pittsburgh has that tiebreaker. So I think that game last night was just huge for Baltimore. And I think it was an encouraging sign that their defense really stepped up when they needed to most. Look, I thought Justin Herbert was pretty good for most of the game. There were a couple throws that were really nice that his teammates and his pass catchers let him down. I think if those balls would have been caught, we could have been in store for a totally different game. And it really just reminds you that the Chargers, as we're watching Quentin Johnson, I'm sure he's going to come up multiple times throughout this segment. That was a key, crucial drop on third down. It seemed like he had a couple of those. But I just think watching the Chargers last night, it really reminded me, like, as much credit as Jim Harbaugh deserves, because he's done a great job with this team, the fact that this team is even here to begin with shows you a lot, because from a pure talent standpoint, I don't necessarily think they're ready to take the next step yet, but they're also so much better than they were last week. And I thought that was an impressive win for Baltimore. So that's really my main takeaway. That was a much needed win for Baltimore that really allows them to take a deep breath and keep their heads above water in the AFC for now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we might as well break it down. Salute to my cousin who was watching on Instagram Live. You know, salute to my cousin. Like he would say, let's go back to the basics, right? And to me, what I learned from this game, from this very important game, is that John Harbaugh's new school approach paid dividends. Okay. Now, I think when we talk about the Harbaugh brothers, right, we talk about the basic stuff, right? We talk about the Harbaugh to Harbaugh pipeline, where you have former Harbaugh players playing with Harbaugh players, former Harbaugh coaches playing with another Harbaugh coach. For example, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Greg Roman were former, people, players, coaches that was on the John Harbaugh staff in Baltimore. Now they're on the Chargers. And you also look at Mike McDonald, who was with Jim in Michigan. He became the DC last year for the Ravens, got himself a gig, so the pipeline, right? We talk about those things. These guys are very similar, but they're a little bit different. One guy in John Harbaugh is more aggressive, more adaptive to modern football, right? He gambles a little bit, as we saw in this game last night. But you also have the other one who's more old school, more rugged, more defensive minded, right? And mind you, the core of what they believe in and how they build their team is the same, right? They like to be good in the trenches, but John is a little bit more aggressive, and that aggressiveness was a difference last night. Baltimore went for it on 3 4th downs. The biggest one came when they was trailing 10-7, okay, with the 2-minute warning, and Baltimore went for it on their own 16-yard line. Okay, they also converted another one on that drive. That was the play of the game right there, because they would have punted the ball back, okay, to my guy Lamar Jackson. I'm getting a text from my guy cousin. I think he might be coming on the show, so I'm a little bit distracted, but I'm gonna finish this lap and we'll get cousin on. They would have punted the ball back to Justin Herbert, and they kept the ball in Lamar Jackson's hands. They remained aggressive. They remained, looking for points, and that's what swayed the game. Now, the reality of the situation is that right there tells me one thing in a nutshell: that John Harbaugh trusts his offense way more than he trusts his defense. And could you blame him? Okay, who's been winning the Ravens games all year long? The offense, right? So clearly that's a clear indication that John definitely has faith in his offense more than his defense. Whereas opposed to last year, where with Mike McDonald, the defense was the strongest part of the team, that he didn't have to be that aggressive. We didn't see him as aggressive like we normally do in years previous last year. But this year, when you have an offense that's carrying the whole unit, and you can't really win a championship with this caliber defense, you got to be aggressive. You don't want to punt the ball back to Justin Herbert. They avoided that, and that's why that was a pivotal moment of the game. But let's face facts here, okay? The Chargers defense got exposed last week, clearly, with Joe Burrow and company, T. Higgins. Jamar Chase ate them in man-to-man coverage. We see T. Higgins, wide open on a deep shot downfield, busted coverage, right? And in this game, Derrick Henry and Lamar just had the remedy. The Chargers defense was not playing them properly. They were playing too far back off the back foot, which allowed the running game to get going. Derrick Henry for a tune of 24 carries and 140 yards, and Lamar Jackson being Lamar Jackson. So clearly we need to be cautious with our optimism with the Chargers as far as this year, but I still think they have a good future. I still think Jim is him Harbaugh, I call him, but John's aggressiveness separates him in Jim, not from like a ranking perspective where he's just a better coach because he's aggressive. No, they're both top coaches in the league, but it separated them in this game, and that's how you could, differentiate these two brothers. And yeah, Zach, the mic is yours.
Yeah, so during my first lap, I spoke mostly about the Ravens, but you brought up a few things that really kind of got my mind churning when it comes to the Chargers that I wanted to get into. So I remember going into that Bengals game that you mentioned last week. The Chargers defense was just playing great football. They were literally putting up historic numbers. And although that competition wasn't necessarily great, especially considering the opponents, right? They gave up 8 points to the Saints. They gave up 10 points to the Browns. They gave up 17 points to the Titans. They held the Chiefs to 17, which is obviously great. They held the Steelers to 20. So prior to that Bengals game, this Chargers defense was playing great. And I thought, okay, maybe a little bit of that had to do with the opponents, but also the Chargers defense in years past has been so bad that we forget how much talent is also on this unit. They have Derwin James, who has had a phenomenal bounce back year. They have Joey Bosa. The young kid from USC, Tuli Pelotu, has had a monstrous breakout year. I like their young corners, but their defense has struggled the last 2 games. And when I look at the Chargers' upcoming schedule, the next 4 games are not easy. They have, I think, a very intriguing game next week on the road in Atlanta. The Falcons coming off of a bye. I think that's a coin flip game that could go either way. They then go to Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football to face the Chiefs. They host the Buccaneers. They host the Broncos. So really, Lil, I thought that game last night, the winner was going to feel very good, almost a lock when it comes to their AFC playoff chances. And I still think the Chargers are in solid shape, but I think these next 4 games will tell me a lot about them because they faced 2 very good offenses the last 2 weeks, and their defense has really struggled. Is their defense going to be able to bounce back against opponents who are not as good, but they're certainly capable? And that's starting next week in Atlanta, facing a dome team that has put up some points.
Yeah, you talk about the schedule and how important that game was last night. I agree wholeheartedly that, a win almost guarantees a playoff berth, barring a collapse that we don't see happening with a Jim Harbaugh-led coach team. But maybe I am in the minority in the sense that I believe last week when everybody was, optimistic about the Chargers defeating the Bengals and everybody was like, Justin Herbert is back. And granted, Justin Herbert is my guy. I was very unoptimistic. I was the opposite. Why? Because that second half showed me that they are far away, not far away, but this year far away, right? In the future, it's bright, right? The next couple of years, but they're not there yet, right? Because you saw in the second half that the Bengals completely dominated the second half of that ball game. The reason why they didn't win was because their kicker did not want to make kicks. And guess what? They have their own version of charging this season where they cannot finish games that they look good in. So it literally forced the Chargers' hand to win the game, right? The door was left cracked, wide open. They didn't take it. The Chargers had a masterful drive with Justin Herbert and Lyle McConkey to win the game. But I looked at that game. I was like, no, they need that alpha because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase called them up. That's what they need. That's what Justin Herbert needs. And look, I like Justin Herbert. I think he's having a very good season this year. I like what Jim Harbaugh is doing, but they need to give that man some help, okay? Help, all right? When you got guys like Quentin Harry, I'm going to call him. He reminds me of Kill Harry. Quentin Harry, okay? Dropping balls that's literally right down a dig route. You got to catch the ball. No, I do not dig it, okay? You got to catch it on the dig it, okay? On a dig route, my guy. He dropped it. Same old cat. That's a cat you dependent on. You're not going to be successful. So if anything, this game also taught me that the Chargers need to go after T. Higgins. No exceptions. I don't want to hear about the Giants needed him. I don't want to hear about any other team that needs him. The Patriots. What are they going to do with T. Higgins in New England? All right. Listen to me. What are they going to do with T. Higgins in New England? Okay. Nothing. They're not going to do anything with that guy, T. Higgins, but allow him to run cardio. No. Let that man show his gifts, okay, and sign him and play with Justin Herbert, a real quarterback. All right. They need help. And like I said, I'm optimistic in the sense that the interceptions are low. I believe this is like 9 games without Justin Herbert throwing a pick. So he's playing great football. That run heavy, win with your defense is allowing him to play efficient football, right? But he needs help. And last night was a clear indication of that.
Yeah, the Higgins point is interesting because I agree. Obviously, he would fit in great with the Chargers. And that was a disappointing performance from Quentin Johnston because I think for the most part this year, he's had a pretty good year, especially relative to expectations and how disappointing last season was. But he just had a few drops in that game that, yeah, really ended up costing them. And for me, Lil, like the Chargers have been one of the more complicated teams for me to figure out because I didn't love the roster going into the season, but certainly Jim Harbaugh has done a really good job making guys better, and going from Brandon Staley to him, like that is just the biggest coaching upgrade maybe in NFL history. Like there aren't many times you will see a bigger one than that, and we're already seeing the dividends. But at the same time, you got to feel like if the Chargers miss the playoffs, this season is going to end up being a pretty big disappointment, and you don't want to see that happen. But I think the next 4 games will tell us a lot. And my last thought on this, Lil, is like, I'm sure you saw this too. A couple of days ago, the NFL announced that they, for the first time ever, are going to flex a Thursday night football game, and the Chargers are involved in that. So on December 19th, that's the last game of this stretch. The Chargers game at home against the Broncos got flexed to Thursday night football, and that's going to be one heck of a game, a meaningful game. And like, how many AFC West teams are we expecting to find their way into the playoffs? And even if you want to get into this, like, who's the better team right now, the Chargers or the Broncos? Because I think that's a fascinating debate.
Those are fascinating debates. But speaking of debates, I got my cousin here on the show. He loved to debate. You know, he's a very good debater, even though, you know, I got his number, but he's still one of the best in the game. You know, cousin, what's going on? Yo, this was unpredicted. I didn't know you was available, but you're on. Hey, what's going on?
I'm real quick. I appreciate y'all for having me. That's first of all. I was watching y'all live. You know what I mean? So I was like, when Zach was talking about the Thanksgiving, this is how you start judging the teams. I was like, yup, absolutely, 100%. This is the time you're supposed to check out these teams and see if the teams is fraudulent, see if the teams are legit. But real quick, I don't know how long I could stay, cousin. I probably could do 2 segments. You know what I mean? So just to be clear, I'm in the mix of still doing my Thanksgiving, running around and doing my prep work. But let's get to it, man. I want to debate. Let's go.
I bet. Zach, you ready to move on to topic number 2? Should we get, or you want to finish up
before
here?
We do, Fred, I want your opinion, bro. How many AFC West teams are getting into the playoffs? Who's the better team right now, the Chargers or the Broncos?
Really quick, in my opinion, I still take the Chargers. And that's based on the quarterback. Based on the quarterback and head coach. Right? I'm going to have to trust that quarterback head coach combination. Clearly, they're playing solid defense. They didn't look that great against Baltimore. But if I have to put my money on it, I'm going to put my money on Justin Herbert. Harbaugh.
I agree with him. You know, look, Sean Payton might be the coach of the year. definitely in the
Cliff.
conversation. But you know, as a rookie quarterback, he's obviously improving game to game.
Right.
But it's still a rebuilding situation. And look, the Chargers are a semi-rebuilding situation. But you know, they still winning games. They still more experience. You know, I like what they're doing defensively, even though the last couple of weeks, I mean, it's against, you know, hot teams, the Bengals, the Ravens. I mean, they're pretty much going to torch a lot of the teams that they play. But you know, even that with Rashad Bateman catch in the end zone, that was good defense. I mean, the defender was all over him. He just made a good catch. You know, so yeah, I still trust the Chargers a little bit more than I do the Broncos for sure.
Yeah, I think both teams are very similar. The Chargers got the better of them when they played the first time this year in Denver, and that Thursday night game is going to be key. But, you know, well, I don't know if we're going to have time to get to this, so I'm just going to say right now, like, I'm just so impressed with Bo Nix. I think as time goes on, he's making that Rookie of the Year race with Jaden Daniels very, very intriguing. Like, at one point in the season, it seemed like Daniels had that award in the bag, but Nix is really playing great football. I love the emergence of Cortland Sutton. I think he's establishing himself as one of the best receivers in the league. The fact that Denver decided not to trade him this offseason when they could have, he was coming up on a new deal. Their defense has been very good. Like, they don't really have a lot of like star-studded names, like known names. When you look at the Chargers, you know, they have Bosa, they have James, but Patrick Surtain and what really else does this Bronco defense have name value wise? But at the end of the day, they just keep on getting to the quarterback. They keep on making big plays. And I thought that game on Sunday in Vegas against the Raiders was a dangerous spot. You know, divisional road games are never easy. The Raiders were competitive early. They made it close, and Denver still found a way to get out with the win comfortably. And that game Thursday night in about a month is one I really already have circled on my calendar.
Yeah, my guy, Derwin James, speaking of him, my guy got cooked on this play, on this route. I mean, he got back to Andrews, but if you watch the, you know, transfer of events, he really got cooked on that play. Andrews, salute to him for the move. But yeah, we're gonna go to topic number 2.
Also, Lil, before we do, I don't know if you want to play that one more time. I'm still laughing about how confident the ref was in the out of bounds call. That was clearly a touchdown.
Oh yeah. I don't know what he was seeing there. I don't know what he was seeing there.
Like, look, watch the ref. Look how confident he is in this call.
Mr. Blind Rat.
Like, man.
I mean, Stevie Wonder had his hands up, man.
He's right there.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.